right there. Hey there. It is January 14th, and we are into chapter 2, section 3, titled The Altar of God. This section was very interesting to me as it begins discussing the temple. And there's a lot of discussion in the temple in the Old Testament and some in the New Testament. There are some religions that find a lot of value in temple worship, temple building, time spent in the temple. And what this first section does is it highlights this idea that the temple is not a structure at all. And while we can build temples, we can perceive the body as a temple, and that's a better step than looking for a physical temple. But even more so than that, the temple really, where the holiness is, it says, is at the inner altar around which the structure is built. The emphasis on beautiful structures is a sign of the fear of atonement and an unwillingness to reach the altar itself. In other words, looking for the outside, the physical, rather than realizing that the temple, that finding God is done within. The real beauty of the temple cannot be seen with the physical eye. Spiritual sight, on the other hand, cannot see the structure at all because it is perfect vision. It can, however, see the altar with perfect clarity. That's a little bit of a confusing line there, but I think that's one that definitely can be prayed over to really understand the difference between the physical sight, spiritual sight, and perfect vision. I'm going to skip over to section 3, talking about realizing that there is a better way than, let me back up. Accepting the atonement by everyone is only a matter of time. This section made me think of some people who avoid spirituality because they just have been burned by it or burned by people, and it's less painful for them to just completely deny the spiritual realm altogether and deny the atonement and deny existence of God. So this reminded me of some of those people, how they go into avoidance and basically they get to a point of so much extreme pain that they have to see a better way. So as this recognition becomes more firmly established, it becomes a turning point, basically, when they realize that there's a better way. This ultimately reawakens spiritual vision, simultaneously weakening the investment in physical sight. And then section 4 goes on to talk about, because of the strength of its vision, it brings the mind into its service when we are basically looking past the error and towards truth. And this reestablishes the power of the mind and makes it increasingly unable to tolerate delay, realizing that it only adds unnecessary pain. As a result, the mind becomes increasingly sensitive to what it would have once regarded as very minor intrusions of discomfort. In other words, saying that in order to avoid this pain, we're going to seek after the spiritual realities and truths and this holy place much more fervently and rapidly. A really neat idea in section 5 discusses being the children of God, being entitled to perfect comfort that comes from perfect trust. Until we find this, we waste ourselves away, seeking it from inappropriate means. A really neat idea is almost at the end, where it highlights how God is lonely without his sons, his creation, and they are lonely without him. And also this idea that God depends on his creation. He created them perfect. He gave them peace so they could not be shaken and could not be deceived. But when they are deceived, then their mind cannot serve the Holy Spirit. And because of this, God is lonely without his children, and they're lonely without him. So they must learn to look upon the world as a means of healing the separation. The atonement is the guarantee they will ultimately succeed. Another really potent section here, and definitely worth some time and study. Let me go back in the middle of section 5 here. One more thing. The atonement is the only gift that is worthy of being offered at the altar of God because of the value of the altar itself. It was created perfect and is entirely worthy of receiving perfection. Wow. Pretty deep stuff and good stuff, and just a reinforcement of the idea that finding God within is a very worthy pursuit. So I hope you found this helpful. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Go ahead and leave me one, and I will see you tomorrow.